The next and final speaker of the morning, we're very happy to have Keith Masbach. Keith is the CEO for the U.S. Geospatial Intelligence Foundation. He's vice chair of the National Geospatial Advisory Committee. He serves on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration's Advisory Committee on Commercial Remote Sensing. He serves on the Council of the American Geographical Society. But most important to me is he has a connection to North Carolina. So he spent many years in the Army and in the government civilian service, and I'll let him tell a little bit more about that, but we're very pleased to have him to speak to us about geospatial intelligence and the connection to your work and the future of the GIS profession. So Keith.
All right. Good morning, everybody. How are you? I am so jazzed to be here. I think, Tim, thank you. Thank to the entire assemblage of the North Carolina GIS community. I think when a mutual acquaintance sent an email, right, suggesting that maybe we could do this, I think I responded in about like 90 seconds. So that's how excited I was. I do, in fact, have a connection to North Carolina. My hero, my uncle, served 31 years in the Marine Corps, so appropriately spent most of his life in and out of Camp Lejeune and appropriately buried in Jacksonville. And he really was the model for my service to the country. I spent 4 years at Fort Bragg, falling out of airplanes, which was awesome. My second favorite, I have 5 children. My second favorite child was actually born there. Now that sounds cruel, but I tell them all that, and it makes them try harder, right? So, and he was born the same year as the Panthers, and he's a hard-charging Panthers fan. I do want to have a shout-out also to Gary Thompson. Gary and I served on the National Geospatial Advisory Committee together, and he is a fantastic advocate and ambassador for the state of North Carolina. And in fact, the things that Stan and John have talked about that distinguish North Carolina from other states, absolutely true. I have the opportunity and the pleasure to see this from the top down, and Gary has been a tireless advocate. I am also a student of history. I'm a direct descendant of relatives that fought on both sides of the Civil War, or depending on how you view it, right, the War of Northern Aggression. German immigrants who fought for the Union in the Arizona Territory, and my great-great-great-great-grandfather who fought for a Georgia brigade. So there's some interesting historical connections that I think you'll find always that come back to location. And we talked a little bit about last night at dinner. None of us in the room made the rules that where matters in like a really important way. We just happen to be doing this business. And it's a great time to be in this business, and I'll talk about that. But Amerigo Vespucci died this week in 1512. He was the guy that actually knew where he was, but we give Columbus a parade and a day for a dude that had no idea where he was, right? Which is fascinating to me. 1540, Coronado went looking for the 7 golden cities out in the western part of the U.S., and he found the Grand Canyon and the Colorado River, but he was like really nonplussed by that because he didn't find the 7 golden cities. In 1792, we instituted the ability to have stamps to send postage, and it was all to send mail, and it was all predicated on distance. Now, I'm not sure who the GIS professionals were who were sitting at the postal desk having to negotiate where it was between 6 and 12 cents and how they were managing distance, but I'm sure they were happily employed. 1825, it was Britain and Russia that worked out the Alaska-Canadian border because we weren't really involved. And a great birthday yesterday, of course, George Washington, right, our famous first surveyor-in-chief. So what we do, and to be in the room full of geo geeks is fantastic. And while we are preaching to the choir, I will submit to you it's also our job to continually take that message more broadly. Several years ago, Penn State's public broadcasting affiliate developed a series of programs on the web. We actually funded the bulk of it from our organization, called the Geospatial Revolution. It is a little dated, 7, 8 years ago, but there are a number of episodes that were created on the web, and I highly commend them to you because, again, although some of the exemplars are dated, it's a great way to explain, especially to people who still don't really understand what you do in your family, to show them and allow them to understand it a little bit. And I think what they were suggesting is that there was, in fact, a geospatial revolution underway, that there were some technologies that had come together in tradecraft or training and education that had come together to allow the power of this location-based services and things were all starting to develop, right? You don't get FedEx and UPS without understanding location. Uber, until recently, was a location company that didn't own a car, right? So when you think about what these underlying technologies have done and the advances that have occurred, we felt pretty comfortable that there was a geospatial revolution underway. So several years later, we took a look at it, and we've had this thing now that we in the defense and intelligence community made up called the geospatial intelligence. Now, roughly, while it is defined in U.S. code, it is the combination of remote sensing of all types, geospatial information of all layers to include human geography, and then data management, but I think it's now sort of expanded to data analytics and data visualization as well. And when you put all that together, you get this thing we call geospatial intelligence. The Department of Defense, about 12 years ago, sort of decided that these things should come together. They had been in separate piece parts of the government, and it was a little bit of a shotgun wedding, and not everybody was comfortable with it, but the idea was it was something we could rally around, and that to provide information for precision weapons, for special operations forces, for highly demanding, time-sensitive customers, we had to pull all this together in a more coherent way. So that is the time that my organization was born, the United States Geospatial Intelligence Foundation, because nobody knew what GEOINT was. We'd made it up. The president signed it. The Congress passed it. The president signed it into law. But that's what we can do in Washington. That doesn't mean anybody knows what it is. Well, we used to be able to do in Washington. So this idea of GEOINT, so we create an educational foundation, that an idea of a rising tide would raise all boats. Where are we now? We've awarded about $1 million in scholarships over time to students studying in related fields. We've got 14 colleges and universities that we accredit to grant certificates and academic certificates in GEOINT, with a little over 700 students who've achieved them to date. About 250 member companies, organizations, and academic institutions, 1,400 individual members. We put on the largest annual gathering of intelligence and GEOINT professionals, probably in the world, but certainly in the nation, anywhere between about 4,500 and 5,000 people coming together. You can find out more about us at usgif.org, our Trajectory magazine. There's copies out here, and other sort of social media opportunities. We love to partner with organizations. We've done things over time with OGC and ASPRS. Currently doing some things with NAPSIG, and you'll understand more about that shortly. GITA, we're a member of COGO. So we really have seen ourselves as part of this community when I think initially this community felt that we were something separate. And I think as the idea of geospatial intelligence has proliferated in a very natural way and has sort of gone viral, it's made a lot of sense for us to do that. So what I'm going to share with you today is that I believe you are all GeoInters and you just don't know it. And that's not because it's self-aggrandizing and I want to recruit you to join the organization. It's because I think our profession is rapidly changing. The technologies are rapidly changing. The expectations are rapidly changing. And I think the first two presenters this morning articulated some of that through the lens of North Carolina's concern. So what I want to do is rapidly run through some of the technological happenings that I believe are all swirling in and of their own right, and when they come together, the confluence of all that is this geospatial intelligence revolution. So the first would be the rapid sort of near ubiquity of precision geolocation information. I'm guessing that none of you walked into the AT&T or Verizon store and said, hey, I'd like a new phone, and please give me the one that has a that's GPS enabled, because you didn't get a choice in that. That's in there mandated by law, right? So that now means that we've mated supercomputers to a GPS precision location capability, and given it to soon more people than even exist on. There will be more handsets, right, in this mobile revolution, smartphones, than there are people on the planet. And so there's something very powerful about that, and it's sort of happened without us fully understanding what it means. And certainly those of us in this room understand some of the implications for the power of that technology, and then also some of the fear of uses of that technology. I noticed a story 2 days ago that the Chinese have decided that in a predominantly Muslim prefecture, they're going to demand that every single car, in order to be registered, must submit to being GPS tracked by the local government. And so it's just, you want a license, you want to register your car, you have to be tracked. And I think the law and privacy implications of these technologies, of course, are lagging way behind, and we all need to be cognizant of that. The second technology that I'd point out would be the proliferation of remotely sensed information. What was once the provenance, certainly early in my lifetime, but primarily the Soviet Union and the United States, is now something that you have access to on your desktop, on your laptop, on your tablet, on your mobile phone. So that's electro-optical, that's radar, that's multispectral, hyperspectral, thermal, space, airborne, manned airborne, UASs. Digital Globe last year puts up a commercial remote sensing satellite, which is legally authorized to sell, limited by its licensing regime, at 30 centimeters, headed to 25 centimeter resolution. Concurrently, there's a small satellite revolution. Last week out of India, the Indians launched a rocket with 104 satellites on it, 88 of which were by U.S. company Planet, right, which you may have seen recently acquired Skybox, which is started off as a grad student program by some former National Reconnaissance officers and Air Force officers. It was just a project they were doing in grad school at Stanford, and as they briefed some VC folks, they caught attention, they got funded, they were later acquired by Google for $500 million, and now have been sold off back to Planet. So we're seeing an incredible amount of activity in terms of mergers and acquisitions and consolidation in this global remote sensing marketplace. But what it means for us is it's an incredibly exciting time. The UAV, drone revolution is well underway as well. You're going to talk about that this afternoon. But let's think about it. At the point of the sensor, from the sensor on back, that's our business. Right? Because we're in the business of understanding and bringing in that image data and understanding how to make sense of it, how to use it, how to make it accessible, discoverable, retrievable, usable, and how to peg it to location and make it matter and draw sense out of it. None of the rest of this revolution happens without powerful processing. All of you are taking advantage of that every day. I can throw out lots of stats about the increasing curve in terms of processing power and availability, and the advent of GPUs, but you're all dealing with that every day. This also doesn't happen without incredibly capable software, and we've got the Esris and the Hexagons over time with incredibly elegant, powerful software that understand where things are headed and moving to online and web services. But we've also got new players, right, like Boundless and Mapbox and others who are bringing a different perspective on how people can do things. And what was once considered perhaps a single integrating way of doing things is suddenly not so simple anymore. Broadband communications, right? Those of us that can remember when we wanted to send a picture of our children to their grandparents, and we'd hit send at the end of the day, and then right before you went to bed, and then you'd go in the morning and see if it's sent. But inevitably, it hiccuped overnight, and you cursed and you started again. But we deal with large files, and the ability to move them seamlessly to take advantage of advances in storage as well, and how cheap that's becoming, and to be able to work and manage from the cloud has changed the paradigm of what many of us grew up with in terms of dealing, especially in the geospatial and certainly the image file world. I talked a little bit about the explosion in mobile devices, video uploads, the number of people who are sensing the planet on a daily basis, the power of the crowd and VGI and the things that we're struggling, of course, associated with that. App development is phenomenal, right? Several 100,000 apps in the Apple App Store alone that have location at their core. Absolutely critical to everything they do, come back to location. Big data, associated data analytics, predictive analytics. We're moving into a field with machine learning and AI, and it's incredibly exciting. I had the opportunity to go a few months ago up to the Watson sort of brain center in New York City and to see the types of things that Watson can deliver. Absolutely phenomenal, right? So Watson can read every MRI ever read and understand what the implications of that, what the ultimate diagnosis was. It can read every medical journal article and make connections. Having just lost my wife to cancer last summer, incredibly excited to see what I think Watson is going to do to revolutionize medicine, because I think while there are thousands, tens of thousands of centers researching cancer, part of the cultural problem, of course, has been all of them trying to discover something themselves. And if and when we can make that more collaborative and feed that into machines that can chunk through the data and the analysis and the information, we're going to get to a knowledge advantage over diseases pretty quickly. Talked a little bit about location-based intelligence and location-based services. It's incredible how the commercial world has grasped onto this and understands the commercial competitive advantage of understanding where and understanding location. And again, I foreshadowed this a little bit earlier, but there's some scary stuff about this, right? You're being watched in the supermarket. You're being watched for which shelf you're looking at, where you're grabbing things, where you're not grabbing things, where you're grabbing something and putting it back on the shelf. So from a macro level all the way down to a very micro level, your traffic patterns in and around malls, incredible data collection going on there to understand consumer behavior, and really, to me, more disconcerting, individual behavior, right? You have a right by law to look at your credit file once a year, get a free credit report. You have no right to any of the information that's being conglomerated by data aggregators who are developing the ability to market to you. So putting up a billboard means I hope some people are going to drive by this and see it and maybe remember it and maybe act on it. The ability to know who you are and to understand your pattern of life, what you do and how you do it, these companies are able to buy your Verizon data, which Verizon will say, don't worry, it's completely disaggregated from your name. But I'd suggest there's only a few Verizon phones that sleep 8 hours a night at your house and spend 8 hours a day at your office. Not too hard to figure out who you are. So Verizon's selling your information, and Giant and Safeway and, well, I'm going to say Piggly Wiggly are selling your information, and Target's selling your information, and CVS and Rite Aid are selling your information, and it creates a pretty powerful picture of you, but it all comes back to location. Here, as a company, is the power of the data behind most of the GPS devices that we use. Look who purchased that company. It was a conglomerate of the three big the German automakers that came together to buy that company, because location, right? The largest growing segment at the Consumer Electronics Show, actually automobiles, because automobiles are electronics platforms that now transport us somewhere in their spare time. And so if you bought a new car recently, the challenge of trying to figure out everything that's going on in there, pretty remarkable. GM just bought a major stake in Lyft, right? Uber's primary competitor. Virtual reality and augmented reality, remarkable. And we got to be very, I think, deliberate in our profession to make sure to separate those things. Augmented reality, which assists the way you look at the world, which assists your interaction with the real world, and virtual reality, which allows you to create and exist in synthetic worlds. But both of them come back to the criticality, the ability to fool the brain, certainly in virtual reality, is to have an excellent approximation of terrain and layers of geospatial so that the brain accepts that this is something that might be real. The Internet of Things, we talked about that briefly before. Again, we didn't make the rules. All those things are somewhere. And where really matters in the Internet of Things. And the Internet of Things adds to our knowledge of where in a remarkable way. So I think if you take all those technologies, and I don't think that's I'm confident that's not an exhaustive list, and you put it in a pot and you put it on simmer, there's some exciting stuff going on. And there's some really good news about that. It is not all about the technology because it is about people. It's kind of gone viral. We made this term up in the defense and intelligence space, and I'd say, again, not exhaustively, where I'm seeing it applied through this lens of geospatial intelligence: police, fire, EMS, emergency managers, critical infrastructure protection, oil and gas, risk and insurance, and. And we're seeing terms that we have used since 9/11 in prosecuting wars overseas. When I hear emergency managers talking about common operational picture and situational awareness and how to task what they're doing with drones from local police departments and what they're learning and how they're getting information pushed to tablets and how FEMA exercises are pulling all this together. So it's an incredibly exciting time. But this is where I'm going to challenge you, because I think your GIS skill sets, which are often underappreciated and poorly understood, and where many of you, I'm guessing, are one deep in your organization, your municipality, your utility, and you're down the hall, and they only find you when the shit hits the fan. And the rest of the time, they're content to have you down there. They grouse about having to send you to San Diego or Raleigh, every so often, but they do it because apparently they have to. But you're now becoming the pivot person for the organization. You're beginning to feel that. You're beginning to develop an appreciation for that. In this crowd, you get it. It's how do we sell that to the people who are the managers? It goes back to the ability that we talked about of having to be part of the business. Hey, boss, I can make you more efficient and more effective at delivering services to our community, to our customers, to our constituents. But there's a responsibility that comes along with that, which you've always felt, which is to make sure that your GIS skills were up to date, that what you learned initially was just sort of a piece of it. You've done a ton of on-the-job learning. You've learned from colleagues. You've learned from conferences. You engage in professional development. But I'm going to suggest to you now that entire skill set is entirely necessary and entirely increasingly insufficient. And I think if you don't go beyond the one remote sensing class you might have had, if you don't to understand remote sensing from space beyond Landsat, to the proliferation of commercial capabilities that are out there, not all of them ridiculously expensive or unattainable, to understand what can be done from UAVs or drones, to understand what can be done from aircraft and the phenomenal benefit, for instance, of something like LiDAR here in North Carolina. If you don't take on that additional remote sensing skill set, you're not going to be able to deliver on the promise of these technologies and the opportunity that that's at hand. If you believe that data management and data analytics and data visualization, creating the ability of what we do to be intuitively understood by those who have to make decisions at the scene of a fire, in the aftermath of an emergency, or in civic planning and utility planning and management, it is your business. It is not for somebody else to figure out. All the work you do, if it's not intuitively presented in a way that can be integrated into planning and business operations, is either of no use or of little use in that discussion. Just like we in the intelligence community learn pretty quickly that exquisite, perfect intelligence delivered 30 seconds too late to make a decision is worthless. And it doesn't matter how hard we worked on it, how we accessed billion-dollar spy satellites to get it and integrated it with SIGINT and HUMINT. It doesn't matter if it wasn't delivered at the time and place to support a decision or somebody to take action. So it's hard. What I've just laid out is not trivial for you. I could take it a step further and say, those of you who are within a couple of years of retirement can probably blow it off and just kind of do what you've always done and kind of strap on some running shoes and sprint to the finish. Those of you that are any farther from retirement, I don't think you have a choice. I think you have to embrace that things have changed significantly. The opportunity to be at the center of the action, to drive decision-making, to drive business operations within your respective communities is at hand. And it's hard, you know, and there's a quote who I don't know to whom it's attributed, but if you think change is hard, try irrelevance, right? So I think those are among your choices. They're just, I really believe this is a phenomenal opportunity. As Wayne Gretzky, you know, a quote attributed to Wayne Gretzky is, "Why were you so good? What was your secret?" And he said, "I skated to where the puck was going to be." Bill Russell, for those of you old enough to remember Bill Russell, he would say, "I got most of my rebounds before they took the shot." You all have, either by accident or on purpose, skated to where the puck was going to be. You have arrived at the center of this geospatial, or through my lens, a geospatial intelligence revolution with a remarkable skill set ready to execute. And if you just add to that, and if you become lifelong learners, aggressively adding new piece parts to your trade and your tradecraft and what you're able to deliver, you are going to be so important to the future of this profession, of this state, and of this nation, of our economy, of the ability to reestablish our infrastructure. You know, I view it often, most often through the lens of national security, but having the opportunity to serve on the National Geospatial Advisory Committee, to hear things like the National Address Database and what we're doing to Next Gen 911, all of this comes back to the ability to manage location, take advantage of these advances in technology, and apply them. So what I'd like to do, as I'm going to share with you, if we're able to do it, is just a 4-minute video that we produced for our last symposium. It's going to, in the finest version of Army training, right? Army training is, I'm going to tell you what I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you, and then I'm going to tell you what I told you. Because right, Army people take at least 3 times to figure it out. I could say something snide about the Marines, but I'll leave it. So, and the Air Force, well, they would just do it in a nice hotel. So I'll show you the video. There's some people in the video who you probably don't know. There's a woman, I think, who comes on first, a phenomenally talented CIA officer, used to run their cyber ops, and now is the deputy director of the National Geospatial Intelligence Agency. A gentleman named Robert Cardillo, who was the president's briefer for about 3 years at the White House for President Obama before coming over to be the director of NGA, and some other people who are somewhat well known in our world, but I think you're going to see them sort of reinforce the points that I've made, and then we're going to have some great time for Q&A, and I hope we can have a discussion. So if you would, sir.
The revolution of this generation is a GEOINT revolution.
If you haven't seen it, if it's not obvious yet, oh, it will be.
This is just the beginning. This really is. We're only at the very precipice of this explosion of GEOINT.
Technology and markets are moving so quickly that it's pretty apparent that we have to change what our understanding of a GeoInter is.
We have people inside of the government with these really unique missions with all this data. And we have people outside the government who have location-based services, and they're really all doing GEOINT. It's just different context of mission.
marketers have been looking for the same information that a lot of people in the Defense Department have been looking for a long time, too. They want to know what people want and why and what they're going to buy and what they're going to do next. From counting cars in parking lots to forecasting earnings. The creativity that goes into these applications, I think, is really quite astounding.
I'll tell you, geospatial data is analytics superfood. It is the most significant kind of data. It is going to fundamentally change what's computable.
I think about the fact that 85 to 90% of our critical infrastructure is privately held. I think about finance, power, water, food. These sectors are already successfully using GEOINT. We can learn from them, and they can learn from us.
The introduction of those companies into this space allows me to believe that there are solutions that we can't imagine now.
Because of the ongoing revolution, the what and the where are going to be more commonly available to everyone, both ally and adversary. We're going to have to move our thinking and our value to the so what. How does that geographic reality create insight to opportunity?
That's a real challenge for us going forward. We need to move beyond just new technologies and think about new ways of integrating them, new concepts for intelligence.
If you can do that, now you open up opportunities to solve problems in brand new ways.
Maximizing the use of publicly available information and open source software will have major impacts on where GEOINT goes next.
The future is not about analyzing geospatial data in isolation. It's about the geospatial data plus the social data, plus other structured and unstructured sources.
When we start combining those, it's incredible what can be done.
I would challenge other geospatial analysts and computer scientists in government and in industry, don't be passive, but get out and participate.
The people are the key here, and we need to really think a lot more about how we want to train and nurture that talent going forward.
The GEOINT Revolution is open to everyone.
I would challenge people to embrace this revolution that we're seeing. Because if I can become a part of this, I'm going to be contributing to insights and an intelligence understanding across a wide variety of problems that really matter.
Look, I can't tell you where this revolution is going. There's no doubt in our mind that it's underway. But we have a responsibility here within our community to help shape it, to help get out in front of it, to start the discussion now.
Questions, comments? Anybody think I'm full of it? I mean, I am, but just ask my third favorite kid. Yeah. Yeah, so I'm going to repeat the question because they are filming, so I'll do a poor job of restating what you asked so elegantly. You work at sort of in a nonprofit world in conservation and things, and you've been very happy over the last several years to get access to open databases and things from the government that have been posted and shared freely that have allowed you probably to be more effective at your job, and you're concerned with a change in the DC environment if we're going to see a change in the availability of data like that. Is that a fair repetition? So yeah, things in DC are interesting. I have friends who call me all the time, you know, usually, sometimes late at night, and say, "Keith, please make me feel better." And I go, "Okay." So the political scientist in me says, "Hey, it's okay. Nobody knew who the hell Abe Lincoln was, and he wasn't even sure how he got elected." When Ronald Reagan was elected, there were a bunch of people who said, "Who is this Hollywood actor with the monkey?" We've been through transitions before, which were rough, and who people believed were sort of potentially the end of the republic. And so we've always managed to get through them. So that's the good news. The bad news is, in my 25 years in Washington, I've never seen anything like this. I didn't have the benefit of living throughout all of the history of the Republic, but it's an interesting, uncertain time. And certainly as an intelligence professional, not great to have my profession disparaged routinely either, right? But I'm hopeful that this too shall pass and things shall come to some sort of calm and norm. And there are some great people, Jim Mattis at the Department of Defense and H.R. McMaster now as a National Security Advisor, super bright, accomplished professionals who are surrounded. So I don't want to get into the politics of the whole thing. I would tell you that there are, in the post 9/11 era, I used to feel guilty, right, as a professional working in the Pentagon or the intelligence community, of going to what I would refer to as the downtown agencies, right? The Department of Commerce, the Department of Interior, NOAA, to see the things they were trying to do, but to watch how their budgets were just so eroded. You know, my desktop was getting changed like every 3 months. They just, I don't know, fine, whatever, put it on. I had no idea why. We just seem to get new stuff constantly. And I go downtown and they're on 8088s and their paint is peeling. And it was frustrating, right? As an American, it didn't seem right, though we were certainly committed to bringing our young men and women home in one piece and alive. I am confident. So over the last 8 years or so, we've seen a renaissance in those agencies, and we've seen them get funding, and we've seen them be able to support the very types of things you asked about. There are some incredibly dedicated people in the professional workforce, not political appointees, but who have been there every day, who have seen the bad times, who have worked through the good times, and I think who are dedicated to making sure that that type of information is freely available. There are a number of sort of insurgencies building, right? Some inside the government, but certainly outside the government, where people are saying, hey, let's create Amazon instances and let's just start downloading this stuff as fast as we can and protecting it. It's kind of cool to watch that happen. Perhaps sad and unsettling that there's a need to, but kind of cool to watch how much people care. And again, because of these technologies, the ability to go grab it, post it, share it, and make it discoverable, accessible, retrievable, and usable. So I think there will be some challenges. I think it's not nearly as dark as it might seem. And so I'd tell you that grit your teeth, be part of one of these insurgencies where you can, and be creative. So I think between the idea that it's not going to be as bad as it seems as things level out, and the fact that we've got these capable new technologies and motivated people to take advantage of them, we can mitigate whatever damage, for lack of a better term, might be done. Does that answer your question? Other questions, concerns? I wish I didn't do the polling thing to see if anybody believes they're a GeoInter. But. Yes, ma'am. All right, so an emergency manager who takes advantage of LiDAR and the phenomenal fidelity that it brings. And as any emergency manager knows, she's only as good as her ability to coordinate left, right, up, down. And you're always out with your bucket looking for data and information, right? Begging, borrowing, hustling, trading sometimes. So is that a fair bastardization of your question? Okay, so yeah, there are some great things going on. So among our partnerships, we work with NAPSG, and we're working closely. There is a phenomenal guy that most of you have never heard of and will never hear of again. His name is David Alexander. Until recently, he was the Geospatial Information Officer at the Department of Homeland Security. Often, headquarters in Washington that sit over a bunch of components who have execution responsibility and authority are just viewed as bloated and in the way. But every so often, somebody takes their job super seriously and says, I'm here to serve. I'm here to serve the components. And what David did was believe that by harnessing the power of the technologies and relationships, he could help the components of DHS execute. So he's worked closely with NAPSG and others They do a public safety GIS summit annually. We are going to participate in that with David this year and NAPSIG. It's going to be down in Alabama at the new water center down there that's looking at how to mitigate water damage and water issues. I think there is a phenomenal opportunity being led by the work that he's done by organizations that sit outside the government, like ours and GITA and others. The crosstalk that you could facilitate, where magic begins to happen, right, is when I went and spoke at an emergency management conference. So now you are often probably put in a position of trying to push the GIS solutions up because they don't understand necessarily operationally, again, until the shit hits the fan, how valuable and important it is and how they have to pivot off it, and then they get religion super quickly. But when we can begin to have folks like, whether it's Eurissa or me or others, get out and speak to operators, to empower you, to make them say at the end of our talk, holy cow, I can't believe I haven't talked to her more, right? Then we're going to begin to create the energy for that collaboration to happen. So I think some of it's top-down, some of it's driven by the FEMA exercises, I think, right, which bring people together and force hard discussions and force learning about what isn't going well. The types of conferences like this public safety GIS summit, which I think will grow over time, which is a great mix of operators and GIS professionals. So I see a lot of good things happening, probably none of it as fast as you would like or need. Will it be in time for the next hurricane or, I don't know. But I think things are happening. I'd love to talk to you afterwards. I'll be around and we can talk about more specifics. So did I sort of answer your question? Other questions? All right, I hope that I have provided some energy to you guys to understand the phenomenal opportunity you have at hand. I am from New York originally. I do BS, right? But I was not today. This is so exciting. You usually get on the wrong line at the grocery store, right? That's the first way to guarantee it's going to slow down. You didn't do that in your choice of profession. You have come into a field that is phenomenally exciting and phenomenally capable, being energized by new technologies and new ways of doing business. And it's just up to you to grab it and to take it forward and apply it to wherever you sit. Again, a utility, a municipality, planning, emergency management, critical infrastructure protection, and support the business operations of making them more efficient and more effective in their delivery. So thank you so much for your time and patience. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Keith. Lots to think about. Keith will be around for a little while. He has to head out of town here soon, so if you need to speak with him, please do so, probably in the next hour or so. I have a bit of intelligence information to share before we break for lunch. In the past week, the Conference Executive Committee has become aware of an exhibit at the City of Raleigh Museum, which is just down Fayetteville Street, a couple blocks over and down if you're not familiar. It's DIY cartography. My wife always gets on me for watching way too many DIY shows on TV, but this is, I'm told this is an excellent exhibit. We don't want you to leave here, but if you insist on getting out and enjoying the weather, that exhibit is responsible for some really excellent work done by the School of Design at NC State. So if you have a chance, I think they're open until 5 or so each day. I'd maybe prefer you wait till after the conference to go, but if you really want to go, I think it's worthwhile, and that comes from my intelligence officers on the executive committee. So next we're going to break for lunch. Lunch is next door. Remember, circulate, get the full dining experience. Sessions start at 1:30. Thank you for all our speakers today.